that I will establish for this evening. But I must say, ladies and gentlemen, if I do not specifically mention you, it is not because I do not recognize your presence. It is perhaps because I have not seen you, but you are all welcome. To our guest speaker, Advocate Maleka, thank you for taking our time to be here with us this evening. And our author, Mr. Namanje, and your beautiful family, thank you for writing the book so we could be here this evening. Our Attorney General, Mr. Festus Mbandeka, the Chairperson of the Law Reform Commission, Mr. Etuna Joshua, members of Parliament in our midst, Meviki Yatoivor, our long-standing lecturer, and I say our because I had labor law, and an advisor to government on various platforms, and of course the wife of our late Andiba Yatoivor, one of, if I must say, personal heroes. Good evening and welcome, ma'am. The former government attorney, Mr. Matiasino, members of the Society of Advocates in our midst, legal practitioners within the greater realm of the legal practice. Welcome, colleagues. I don't want tomorrow to see you at court and you say, you didn't even greet us at your event. So welcome. And then to our staff members, the people that keep the engine running here at Sisa Namanje & Company. I know I saw you this morning, but welcome again, and thank you for having set up this beautiful place for us to have our event this evening. And then, of course, our clients within our midst, and truly just our Sisa Namanje people who keep entrusting us with mandates to act on their behalf. Welcome this evening. And then, of course, our invited guests, businessmen and women, captains of industries in your various respective capacities. Ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening to you all. Now, this evening, I run the risk of becoming a priest, but this is the part where I say, and I issue a certificate in terms of Rule 130, I believe, that after a diligent search, I could not find something close enough within our legal realm that could help me interpret what I am about to present to you. So I turn to the book of Matthew, chapter 25, verses 14 to 30. And it's quite long, so I will be jumping here and there. And it will become apparent why I have chosen this. For those of you who may know, it refers to the parable of the talents. And it's about a master who leaves and then gives his servant some talents, and then he comes back after a while. So I'll jump 14 and 15, and then I'll just go right to 19. So 19 says that, now after a long time, the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them. And he who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 talents more, saying, Master, you delivered me 5 talents. Here I have made 5 talents more. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over little, I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. And he also who had the 2 talents came forward, saying, Master, you delivered me 2 talents. Here I have made 2 more talents. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little, I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. He also who had received the 1 talent came forward, saying, Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow, and gathering where you gathered no seed. So I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here you have what is yours. But his master answered, You wicked and slothful servant, you knew that I reap where I have not sown, and gather where I scattered no seed. Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and at my coming I should have received what was my own with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to him who has the 10 talents. For to everyone who has will more be given, and he will have an abundance. but from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away, and cast the worthless servant into the utter darkness. In that place there will be no weeping and gnashing of teeth. And really, it brings me to a point where this evening we are gathered because a man who was given 5 talents intends to make them more than just 10. And I want us to use this moment as a point of reflection, perhaps, to wonder what we would say when our master returns. I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that when Caesar's master returns, he will say, "This is what I have done with your talents. And I have written the law on hearsay evidence in Namibia. I have written the law on liberty, arrest, and detention in Namibia. I have written on the law on privacy and the rationality standard in Namibia. I have written the lawyer's place in society and professional secrecy through case law. I have written on prosecuting civil appeals to the Supreme Court of Namibia, which I pause to say has helped many of you who are in legal practice here today. And I have also written on the administrative law guide for political leaders. And finally, and probably not finally for his lifetime, but for tonight, I have written legal principles from selected case law. And if that is not worthy of a round of applause, I don't know what. So we have a very short program for you this evening, because if you know my boss, he is not a man of many words. He moves with speed after an hour. So we have a very short program this evening. And my first duty is really just to welcome all of you. I believe I have done that. This is number 13 and 15 Pasteur Street. Please feel welcome. We have some guys there serving some wine if you feel thirsty. So you can stand up and get a drink as long as it's not disruptive. Some of you have already opened your throats, which is great because that is what we love here. At Caesar Namanje & Company, we are a law firm about community. We are a law firm about people because we believe in the African saying, "Umuntu gabantu." Okay, let me say it in Oshindonga. Ontontu morantu. Yeah, right. So we really believe that we are because of the shoulders of the giants we stand on, and we will be the giants of the next generation to stand on. And I'm so happy to see many young legal practitioners present here today, and I hope that the many of you who are here will be able to emulate this example of carrying communities with you, because that is what, above all fees and all, setting jurisprudence in this country and all, what we are really about is bringing people together and creating an atmosphere of camaraderie, unity, and just good legal practice. If you've missed that, this is not the place to be. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, please feel welcome to this very auspicious occasion of another book launch of Mr. Namanje. And with that, and I hope my next speaker is ready, we will then move into the program where we have the introduction of the book, which will be done by Advocate Chibwana. And then we will have a short, okay, maybe not short, I'm not going to limit you. We will have a speech by Hambelela Namanje, and then we will invite remarks from the author. He said 5 minutes, I'm going to time him. And then after our author, we will have our keynote address by Advocate Maleka. And then with that, we will close and have, hopefully, a wonderful evening. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, may I use this opportunity to invite Advocate Tinashe Chibwana for the introduction of the book.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I stand on the protocol already established. I'll just go straight into it and talk briefly about the book. I'll be 5 minutes. In the lawyer's terms, 5 minutes could be anything up to 3 hours. But ultimately, the role and function of a legal practitioner, whether a litigator or a legal advisor, is to find, one, the applicable principle of the law, and two, to understand that principle. It is only when we have found the relevant legal principle and when we understand it that we can properly service clients by giving them legal advice, correct legal advice. It's in those circumstances that we can draft proper papers, whether in action or motion proceedings, and also that we can draft proper submissions that are good for the country's jurisprudence. Now, with that in mind, I'll just quickly move on to the book. When I purchased the book, Sisa wrote a note, and if you know Mr. Namanje and his handwriting, you would know that it took me quite a while. Today in court, he managed to give me the last word that I couldn't decipher. But he says, I hope this book shall be of some help in your busy legal practice. And as though by cue, yesterday I had a whole speech prepared, but the internet decided, both service providers decided we are going to shut down. I was in the middle of preparing heads of argument. Interested me for a matter I was arguing against Mr. Namanje this morning. So I was stuck there. I needed to research. I needed to find the law. I needed to find cases to understand the propositions of the law. And I had read the book. So I took the book. I had 6 principles of law I needed to deal with. I did not do any further research, save for just quoting from the book, taking the judgments cited therein, and I was able to put up decent heads of argument. So ultimately, that's what the book is about in the context of the practice of the law and our obligation to our clients. It gives you the legal principles. It gives you an easy basis to understand at a very basic level, enough to properly advise a client what you must establish for the purpose of properly advising and representing your client. So I would say the following, that this is a book that every person that litigates or every person that's going to advise a client about some principle of the law should have. And I've found that, and I say this, Mr. Namanje, it is a very selfless work, because I was throwing cases, his own cases from his own book at him, which, courtesy of my internet service providers, I would not have had the opportunity to do that. It made my research so much easier. And so it is a book that we must all who practice law have. It is good for our jurisprudence, because judges make decisions based on good submissions, where proper principles and understanding of the law have been addressed. So I'd just like to say thank you, Mr. Namanje. It's a wonderful book insofar as it sets out the relevant legal principles of the law. Thank you.
The problem with both speakers. Thank you, Advocate Chibwana. For those of you who don't know, Mr. Namanje is a proud father of 3 children, and then some, because all of us are his. And all of them, in my experience, are well spoken. But tonight, we have the honor and privilege of hearing from the youngest, Ms. Hambelela Namanje. Please come to the floor.
Good evening, everyone. I am very happy that my father has released another book. I am proud of him because he writes books. Tatem took many months to write this book. I am happy that he is done writing this book. I'm also glad he wants to share his knowledge with all of you. Tate's books are good for people who want to become lawyers or are studying law. I hope his book becomes well known and popular. He inspires me because I want to write books when I'm older, and I hope he inspires all of you. Thank you for listening to me.
Well, thank you for talking to us, alhamdulillah. So now my next speaker, ladies and gentlemen, is a man who needs no introduction. But I want to tell you something that happened just yesterday. So Mr. Namanja goes in the office group and he says, I need a junior for this matter. So I reply and I say, me. Because if 5 minutes pass and no one replies, guys, this is work. Okay, so I'm like, me, let me sacrifice myself. And lo and behold, he says, it was, I think, exactly 20 minutes past 6 o'clock. He says, okay, print for me, we are in court at 2000 hours. That time I'm sitting in Trombos with jeans. I'm like, excuse me, what do you mean? And so anyways, long story, he comes to the office and he comes, walks in his suit and everything, ready to go argue. And he even leaves us at the office trying to upload our answering affidavit, and he goes to court. And he's at court. And guys, there is nothing worse than your boss leaving you behind and your phone is right there and you see him call because he is asking for something and you have not done it. So he calls. He says, are you guys not done uploading? I'm like, no, we are at the second last annexure. Mind you, the annexure is 99 pages. And I don't know why, for the life of me, copy machines will freeze on you in an urgent application. And so he's like, oh, come in the Gashona. I'm like, it's not us. It's the copy machine. But I will tell you this. Come rain or high waters, if there is one thing I am sure and I can tell you with confidence, is Caesar will fight for you. Because he was on his way to dinner with his family. And he got the instructions and he's like, well, let's jump on this. And that is what he does. At his very core, he is a man of principle. He is a man of hard work. And we will say a lot about him. But may it never be that he's lazy. May it never be that he is stingy with his knowledge, because he has shared it, he continues to share it. And ladies and gentlemen, may I invite him to the podium to speak to you.
Thanks, Amberella. Yes, time me want you. If I say 5 minutes, I will take 3 hours. Now, to the very kind people around me here, distinguished guests, it is a profound and singular honor that I share this moment with you at the launch of my 7th book, Legal Principles Selected from Selected Case Law. This book follows 6 others in various fields of law. It is a 500-page piece. Advocate Maleka, my chief mentor, you made me actuary. Thanks for your valuable guidance. Attorney General Atembadeka, thanks for your support and guidance. The above work, as far as it relates to this book, came as a product of extensive reading at quite a monumental scale, believe me, of case law over the last 16 months or so. I also must thank my clients over the year. I could not have done it if I was not lucky to be receiving good legal work in good quantities from individuals and corporate clients. Advocate Chibwana has just spoken about the book, and I need to say nothing more about it. Special thanks to my family, Lovisa, and the kids for making sure I'm loved. And I'm in fact well taken care of, so that I'm in a position to practice law day in and day out. Mine is the practice of law at an extensive level. It is some work, believe me, every day. The last 24 hours is a good example. I did 3 agent applications in the High Court of Namibia. Last night, I argued an agent application with Taimi as my junior in the field of mining and environmental law from 20 hours to 23 hours last night. Of course, this morning we won that case. This morning, I was up, and Hamberera knows, 5:30 I must be on my way to office every day. This morning, I argued another agent application, again in the High Court of Namibia, in the field of telecommunication law, between 9 and 13 hours. And lastly, I argued a third one today again, between 14 hours and 16 hours, just a couple of hours ago, again in the High Court. This was in the area of administrative law and procurement law. I think at last I must now admit that the fulfilling journey I had so far as a lawyer may have been a product of sweat, determination, and commitment, and perhaps largely by luck. But in truth, I only managed to get here because of a great deal of solidarity, generosity, and charitable deeds towards me from friends, family members, and strangers. It took a village to get me over my challenging circumstances over the years. My early days as a child at Tonyanya were not that costly. My father was a wanted person. His first car was forfeited in the early 80s by the same High Court before independence. He was arrested and imprisoned. My parents got separated at least twice. As I revealed at the MTC Masters of Success TV show aired in 2015, in the mid-80s, I and my brother Thomas were tortured by Kufut and saved by our mother. I spoke about it. And by the way, the person who tortured us, when I came from Nyango and I inquired, I was told by Mandela, I don't know whether Mandela is here, he told me, Drongi, he was part of the South African Namibian soldiers, Makakunyas, was a Tokatope. He was working in the Namibian police. I'm not saying it because I will do anything. I'm just saying, recently freedom fighters have been attacked, but a person who tortured us as kids ended up working in the Namibian police. And because of the circumstances in which we were, we thought this incident is just that. We never spoke about it. We never thought about it. But it has shaped us in one way or the other. While as a well-performing learner, I could have dreamed big. If our society was normal then, I couldn't. I simply could not dream of bigger things such as having a law firm I have now. It is true I passed with flying colors in my younger days, but in the sea of poverty at the time, I simply could not dream bigger things, other than learning to read, write, and be a little bit smarter than other boys in the village. I was content to perform well at school and aspire to be nothing of the sort I am today. I first dreamt of becoming a lawyer, but in fact, the lawyer, not just a lawyer. While reading in my junior secondary school at Nyango, Swapo Health Education Center, Kaoma District, Western Zambia, I read names of advocates, George Bizo, S.C., Advocate Maleka, and others, and I was inspired. At the beginning of 1991, this is after independence, after Nyango was closed in Zambia, I arrived back at Onyanya and was immediately taken up as a learner at Ukure Senior Secondary School in grade 11. I spent almost 2 months in grade 11 in 1991, passing my test and assignment with flying colors. Simon Nambahu and others can confirm. Then suddenly, bad news. Unlike my former classmate in Nyango, one of them is my comrade John Ali Pinge, the Chief Executive Officer of RFA, same class in Nyango, went to schools such as Mweshipandeka and Wakana, and they were never demoted. The three of us that came from Nyango and landed at Ukura Senior Secondary School had to be demoted. In my case, I was demoted from grade 11 to grade 9, together with Joe Nambiri, Nelson Dangoro, Mandela was demoted from grade 10 to grade 8. And because in Ukura Senior Secondary School there was no grade 8, he had to go to Omthia. I felt I had lost everything. I felt my dream of becoming a lawyer and change maker in the independent Namibia was lost. I considered leaving school altogether. But then I knew the opportunity to uplift my family and one day become a lawyer as I wanted will all come to naught if I were to despair and surrender to my difficult circumstances that I found myself in. At last, I decided to redo grade 9. And at the end of 1991, I passed with flying colors as the best student at that school. I did the same in grade 10, grade 11, and grade 12, and completed my school in 1994 as the only student passing with full matric exemption. I was motivated, but still disappointed. Again, my dream to start studying law in 1995 was destroyed. One of my former teachers, whom I had given an admission application to submit at UNA, as he was coming to Windhoek, during the last quarter of 1994, unfortunately threw away my application and used the $20 application fee my grandmother, Kukuntinda, gave me. This I only found out at the beginning of 1995. So you know, in those years, the law faculty only took in 25. Advocate Narib can tell you, 25. They never took late applications. Again, there was another delay in the realization of my dream. I decided to wait another year. I joined the prison service as a prison warder in May 1995, while waiting for 1996 to pursue my law studies. I guarded prisoners at Windhoek Maximum Security Prison. I guarded prisoners at Windhoek Central Hospital. And I watched over prisoners as a guardsman on the roof of Windhoek Central Prison. In fact, I can remember some dangerous prisoners escaped when I was on the roof. I slept that day. And my supervisor, Sergeant Tokwe, I think he's still working at prison. I learned a little bit of Afrikaans when I was at prison. I just heard after some time he was saying Bevader Namanje, kommen! There was silence. Bevader Namanje, kommen! Wat doen jij? Fuck off, man! Die bandieten weg! Something to that effect. And Mateus Nangara and Primus Angura, those days, those were dangerous prisoners. They escaped, but they were rearrested. It was a learning exercise not to sleep on duty. But of course, I didn't go for a disciplinary hearing. I resigned at the end of December. Finally, in 1996, after resignation from the prison services, I joined UNAM Law Faculty as a student for a 5-year degree program. It was rejoicing and yet exciting. But my circumstances again were not good. My father had gotten ill. There was virtually no other person in the family except a few relatives with mega resources. In Windhoek, I was lucky to have Memetaimi Tope to accommodate me. I was unable to get a study loan in the first 2 years of my studies. It was tough, but I was motivated. I had people on my side. Very good and kind people. They were. Therefore, it is the solidarity and generosity of people, many of them not family members, who carried and assisted me. This is the biggest and the priciest gift I have. The good people by and around me. Then I also joined the Namibian Defense Force while studying at UNAM. I headed the Police and Planning Division with the rank of Lieutenant Colonel. This was a good mentoring tenure I have as a soldier. I worked with General Dimo Hamambo. I worked with General Hawara. And of course with General Shari. These were all good mentors I was able to find to work with me. At the end of 2000, I finalized my study. But then, the same year, I lost my father, Simon Kapepe Namaja. Toward the end of 2001, I decided to leave NDF. Finally, I realized that I was about to kickstart my long-held goal of becoming a wave-making lawyer in Namibia. I thank Nathan Dawedapo for giving me an opportunity as a candidate legal practitioner. My journey has been exciting, but I needed people to assist me. It was people like the late Johannes Akapandi Njara who assisted me in 2003 to secure a lease agreement with a company which was not prepared to contract with me because my financial credit, I was not financially credit worthy. This enabled me to open my office, this very office. The date of my admission, the 10th of March 2003, I made sure I have one of the best lawyers to move my application because I didn't want it to fail. I hired Advocate Dave Smart. I got admitted. It was a Friday. On a Monday, while I was arguing a bail application in a robbery matter, I received a message my brother Thomas Namanjo passed on in a tragic fire incident. I had to drive to the south, get his body, bury him in the north, and 3 weeks later, I opened this law firm. There were several other people like Metaimi Tope who toiled for me, despite me having nothing to offer. This assisted me to reach my goal so I can uplift others. This is to help others. This is now work in progress. Through my foundation, I need to thank most sincerely my family, my employees and colleagues. All these people contributed to what I have achieved. It is for this reason that everyone who has assisted me to get here, this book, 500 pages book, was written in your honor. Men and women who assisted me all my life. This is in your honor, and your recognition, I will never forget. It is because of my acknowledgement that I wouldn't have made it without you that I have dedicated much of my monthly income to charity. In this respect, through the Sisana Manje Foundation, I ensure that I uplift others. I saw somebody in social media saying he is dishing out money. It's not a joke. It's a recognition of people that carried you. This includes underprivileged kids, students, and former planned combatants to whom I pay between 10,000 to 30,000 per month, to selected former planned combatants seriously injured during the War of Liberation under my program, Injured but Not Foreign Planned Combatants. I owe a great deal of debt to many people, for they carried me when I needed the world to save me. At one point, I had to assist a colleague in the legal profession who had fallen ill. He was not working for my law firm, but he was sick. His circumstances were worrying. I thank my colleagues, my co-directors. I came to them to make a difficult decision. I decided to carry him, paying around 30,000 per month for 24 months between August 2019 and to August 2024. This was a huge financial sacrifice. I was asked by someone why I was doing a crazy thing to pay for a colleague who is neither my employee or family member. But this is a debt I was paying to the community and society for having carried me. At one point, I almost decided to stop, but my undertaking to assist this person could never just be stopped because a colleague was not feeling well. I am a product of people's solidarity. In fact, I'm a product of charity. Therefore, this evening, all of you, my people, you are the biggest gift I have. I wouldn't have made it without you. So many people contributed to my journey. Please understand that I have nothing of a commercial value to give, but this book as the token, a sincere acknowledgement of what you truly mean to me, the people by and around me. I will forever be grateful. This book is yours, my people.
So I'm not exactly sure if there's anything much left for me to say after he has spoken for himself. But I am glad that his heart for people comes across in his own speech. And I hope all of you who know him and have walked the journey with him can truly attest to his love for people and his foundations around people and the unity to that effect. Now, ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker is truly a man to me who needs no introduction, and at least to the greater legal fraternity in Namibia also needs no introduction, and I believe even in his home country needs no introduction. But because I had the privilege of preparing a Section 85-2 application for him just this week, I will tell you that our next speaker had obtained his BProc from the University of Zululand then. I'm not exactly sure what it is now. But he has been practicing law and has been admitted as an advocate for over 33 years. And of that, he has been practicing as senior counsel for over 23 years. So he is, by far and large, really my senior. But to bring the point home is that I think a week ago, I took a trip to Joburg, and Mr. Namanja asked him to take the book for him so that he can have an opportunity to prepare for this book launch. And so when Mr. Namanja gave me the book, it wasn't signed. So I asked him, but don't you want to sign the book? Then he says, yeah, no, it's Vincent, he's my mentor. What could I possibly have to say to him? There are no words. And it sounded like a very simple statement, but it's one that I can understand, knowing the journey to whatever extent I know, that the two of them have traveled together in this legal practice. But it is also a journey I can speak to in my little knowledge, that for the years that I've known Advocate Maleka, and they are far few from the years he has practiced law, is that he has been one who recognizes everyone around him. Something I found profound within our profession, because sometimes people who are far above you may think that you are far beneath them, but he is a man who recognizes even the simplest person in a room. That's a quality that is hard to find sometimes. So at his very core, he is a human being who celebrates others in their strengths and uplifts them in their weaknesses. And that speaks to his ability to bring law as an avenue to change lives. And truly, I think when Mr. Namandi was talking about him coming, part of what he will talk to us about is how to be lawyers within our society. And I cannot, at least from the lawyers that I've practiced with, both in Namibia and South Africa, find someone who's far more senior than many of us in this space this evening, who can truly speak to us about remaining yourself as a human being at your very core, able to connect with other human beings and still be a celebrated and acknowledged legal practitioner, because often the two worlds do not collide in a very good way. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I have the single honor and privilege to invite our keynote speaker for this evening, Advocate Vincent Maleka.
Good evening. Cesar, it's a most humbling experience which I've never had before, to stand here before your close and brought up family and hear your colleague Taimi speaking such wonderful words about me. I wish my wife was here present to hear these wonderful words. I'm sure she would remark that you're talking about a person she doesn't know, although we've been together for 30 years. And it's most humbling for you to invite me to share this momentous occasion of celebrating the launch of your 7th book. You are a busy practitioner, full of boundless energy, and excel in your commitment to defend the causes of your clients to the hilt. Where I come from, the art and work of writing legal books is an exclusive preserve of the academics, because they have time, they have the expertise, and they have the resources to produce recognizable legal material. But here we are with you as a busy practitioner, outclassing and surpassing academics in their own field of pursuit. I have read this book, and I followed the title of the book as I was reading it, because it requires us not to study it from the first to the last page, but to do so on a selected basis, because you discuss selected cases on legal principles. I would like to express my heartfelt congratulations for yet another milestone in your career. I feel also honored that you regard me as a mentor, when the role of our relationship should be otherwise reversed. You are a living child of our time, and I too feel inspired by your achievements. I have listened to your young daughter expressing familial encouragement and inspiration that you are to her. And listening to her, the way she spoke about you, and the pace of her recognition of your achievement, I would predictably say to you, without undermining any measure of achievement you have had thus far, that she is the greatest lawyer in the making. I have decided to celebrate your book through a title that is The Role of Lawyers in Emerging Democracies. And I felt that I should do so having read the preface of your book. And it will be an injustice if I do not reflect and reference that part of the preface, because it inspired the topic. And it reads as follows. During the whole of 2024, I was involved in high-stake cases and litigation, as well as various commercial endeavors. These professional undertakings led to a wide-ranging review of the law. At the same time, I was kept busy populating my recently released app called CISA at Law, which has become an instant fingertip instrument for legal research. During this period of extensive study of the law, I came across legal principles useful to practicing legal practitioners, convincing me to compile selected legal principles in an easily available legal reference work to assist legal practitioners. And it ends as follows. I caution, however, that in the interest of context, it is necessary for readers to read the judgments from these legal principles were extracted. That is a preface which inspired me to choose this topic, because it reflects the broader role which legal practitioners must play in society. And as the title indicates, I'd like to speak about lawyers in specific countries. And those are emerging democracies. And the context of those democracies assumes that their constitutional arrangements acknowledge the rule of law as the foundation and organizing principles of resolving disputes in societies. And so, AG, that must mean, amongst others, that courts and other adjudicatory forums are independent, both in form, perception, and substance, in order to render outcomes that are in fact free from political and commercial pressures when they fulfill their judicial and adjudicatory functions. And that also must mean that legal practitioners in those emerging democracies enjoy or must enjoy the widest amplitude of their freedom to represent their clients without fear, favor, or prejudice, but obviously subject to the observance of their ethical rules and conduct. In other words, we as lawyers should not be discouraged or disincentivized for not representing our client because of the unpopularity or the popularity of the cause they stand for. That also must mean that judgments of the courts and adjudicatory bodies in those emerging democracies are binding on all persons who are affected by them, obviously subject to the usual rules of appeal and review processes. And here too, our duties as lawyers in emerging democracies is to foster a culture where we counsel our clients to accept judicial and adjudicatory outcomes, however difficult that may be, when those outcomes are no longer the subject matter of appeals or review. This is the context and template or a canvas on which I'd like to reflect on the substance of the topic of today. The starting point of this topic is that lawyers in emerging democracy face greater challenges more than lawyers in any other mature democracies. I readily accept that some of those challenges may be easy to handle, but there are instances where those challenges bring about dilemmas, where difficult choices have to be made by those lawyers, especially in cases where a lawyer's duty to his or her client might conflict with or intersect with his or her duty to a court and raises complex ethical questions. Whilst challenges for lawyers in emerging democracies may not be universally similar, they, however, have some common features which I'd like to explore with you tonight. And as I do so, I don't mean to be prescriptive. The idea is simply to raise issues around which we can have a healthy debate. I make this observation at this stage because there is a need for extraterritorial engagement or engagements amongst lawyers in these emerging democracies in order to confront the common challenges they face and enrich their collective understanding on how those challenges should be tackled. The challenges that I would reflect on are much broader than a forensic knowledge of an application of the legal rules through advocacy in courts and adjudicatory forums. They must inevitably focus on constructive contributions which legal practitioners must make for development of a better society, especially the litigants that we seek to serve, and also to courageously confront these historic habits which seek to perpetuate past injustices and entrench historic privileges. Then, what are those challenges? The first challenge that I thought is obvious is that lawyers in emerging democracy must engage in critical thinking and creative engagement with legal principles. It is important that we should confront this challenge because, as we know, legal rules operate on the basis of legal precedents. For non-lawyers, that means that past judgments, however old they may be in our legal materials, continue to be binding in the present courts and will continue to be binding in all likelihood in future courts and adjudicatory bodies. It is regrettable that we still observe faithfully this principle of legal precedence. It reminds one observing a bird called the Kilelu bird, because when it flies backwards as it is trying to garner traction going forward. And precedent principle requires us to look backwards in order to resolve current and future legal controversies. Often, precedent is formulated in accordance with principles that are totally uncontextual to the problems that we currently face and are likely to face in the future. I suggest that lawyers in emerging democracy, there is a greater and compelling need to confront challenges around precedents in order to make past judgments more relevant to the prevailing circumstances, and where necessary, to throw out precedent judgment which no longer make sense. I therefore encourage lawyers in emerging democracy, when they present their cases and articulate their arguments in support of their causes, to do so not by relying exclusively on precedents. Of course, that is important, but I encourage them to argue from the premise of general principles, because general principles are what they are. They fit any circumstances and they're open to modernization, having regard to the constitutional values that all of us are required to observe and promote. In fact, I have now come to understand that when you argue on established general principles, less so precedent, you are not likely to be contradicted, because general principles are what they are. Generally, they are well established. If they are not well established, then you can modernize them. I therefore urge lawyers in emerging democracies to be critical about precedent and to apply it to the extent that it becomes necessary with some kind of critical thinking. You must have appreciated by now that when I urge confronting precedents through critical thinking and creative engagement with legal principles, I do not suggest that you should become inventive. The two are different. The one serves the broader goal of enhancing the development of the law to reflect best practices. In that way, it seeks to empower judicial officers and adjudicators to promote the spirit and purpose of emerging democracies. The other, there is inventiveness, which I do not encourage, serves to promote undesirable outcomes which do not serve the broader interests of litigation of the litigating community. In my humble, respectful submission, I suggest that it is not enough simply to win a case for the sake of it. Of course, we celebrate the cases that we win, regret those that we lose. The point I wish to make is this: we should not encourage lawyers in emerging democracies to indulge in points taking when they litigate cases, especially those type of points that are merely dilatory and delay the course of justice, because outcomes that arise from those sorts of technical outcomes simply do not serve anyone, including the point takers and their clients, because you may win on a technical ground and justice may not be served, but next time around you'll get to the substance of the case. And let's see where that takes you. The second challenge that I'd like to focus on, which confronts lawyers in emerging democracies, is to be courageous in the defense of the causes they represent. Legal contestation in emerging democracies often involved charged controversies, especially about struggle for resources. More recently, especially where I come from, there is an emerging trend of intimidating those lawyers who represent the causes we regard as unpopular. Some even resort to violence and other intimidating techniques or tactics in order to discourage lawyers from faithfully fulfilling their duties. Regrettably, I come from a country where we have a recent chilling experience of one of our colleagues who was cold-bloodedly murdered in his own office in broad daylight by persons who masqueraded as his clients and sought or pretended to consult with him in his boardroom, simply because he was doing his duties against the causes they sought to hide. That is a difficult challenge that lawyers in emerging democracies have to confront. And I say so because one of the features of emerging democracies is about struggle for financial and material resources, be it in the private sector or the public sector. Some resort to illegal means to gain access to resources. And when the might and the arm of the law confronts them, they seek to intimidate those who seek to bring them to justice. One of the difficult challenges that emerging democracies always confront is to transform their societies in order to bring about the necessary equality and equal access to resources. Those who have been privileged by past practices will often resist transformative goals of emerging democracies in order to change the patterns of relationship. And often they would deploy skillful legal techniques by gifted lawyers to resist those transformative processes. I suggest to you that lawyers in emerging democracies, when they serve those causes, have a greater responsibility to understand why some such resistance ought not to be tolerated. But if by their ethical duties they are forced to represent those who seek to cling to the privileges of the past, then they must do so responsibly. I say so because in Namibia, one has had an experience of litigants represented by skillful lawyers who engage in litigation that is designed to prevent transformative processes of an emerging democratic government by raising legal arguments that are way beyond and broader than the causes they represent. In a simple case where the taxman seeks to collect tax due, lawyers representing the taxpayers would go and raise constitutional challenges which have nothing to do with their obligation to pay taxes. And I challenge lawyers in some such democracies to be careful about responsible litigation and not to raise points for the sake of it and litigate broader issues which are of no material interest to the limited causes they serve. The third challenge I have identified and wish to discuss with you is that lawyers in emerging democracies have a greater duty to broaden access to legal services, obviously within the limits of our individual and collective resources. Legal services have become, unfortunately, unaffordable for many. I, as a lawyer, would not be able to afford my services. If you sue me, my first best option is to seek a settlement, because I cannot financially assume the burden of paying my legal fees. In that context, emerging democracies also face a thin and limited pool of lawyers. And yet, they have to serve many who are on the margins of the society. These challenges ask of us to resort to creative means in order to broaden access to legal services in a manner that is affordable. What I have in mind are things like extending pro bono legal services. For non-lawyers, those are legal services that are extended to clients for free or on a reduced basis. It ought to be a badge of honor for a lawyer in an emerging democracy to extend pro bono services rather than something that constitutes an unwanted sacrifice. Ethical experiences where I come from indicates that practitioners in my jurisdiction are required to provide pro bono services as part and parcel of their practice, and to file certificates of the amount of hours and the type of legal services where they extended pro bono work. And those certificates are filed with the regulators. And it has become important because regulators often extend some form of privileges to legal practitioners. especially if you would want to get a certificate of good standing from them, or you want your support from them if you wish to pursue your career further, like going to the bench. Again, we could extend our legal services to those on the margins of society in an affordable fashion by confronting a number of rules that impede access to courts. What I have in mind are rules relating to the so-called legal standing in court. For non-lawyers, that means you cannot enter the doors of the court unless you are able to explain your interest to a judge for him or her to listen to your cause. And as lawyers, we call that locus standi. We have to confront these sorts of impeding processes. And one of the tools that I would suggest to lawyers is to consider class action litigation, because justifying legal standing in class action is much, much easier than justify standing in other cases. Another feature which impedes access to courts is the question of costs. I've already reflected upon that and how legal services have become expensive. We are still involved in that old archaic adversarial system of litigation, where if you are on the losing side of the legal battle, you not only have to pay the costs of your lawyer, but also the costs of your opponent. These adverse cost orders often discourage access to court. We must find some practical and justifiable means to confront these sorts of adverse cost orders. I see from my limited reading of judgments in this jurisdiction that the courts have now begun to adopt the so-called Biowatch principle, which holds that in constitutional litigation, where litigants seek to uphold or advance their constitutional claims, you don't penalize them for losing cases through adverse cost orders. One of the ways of encouraging broader access to legal services is to establish locally based legal institutions such as legal aid clinics. And we as lawyers from emerging democracies, we have a duty to do so. And we have a duty to participate in them. Because through those local institutions, we are able to share our knowledge of advocacy with people who otherwise do not have access to law. And the better they understand the nature of the legal rules and the machinery of engagement, the more likely they would behave in a manner that discourages litigation. So there's an upside to meeting that challenge head on. Another way of encouraging access to legal services is to consider wider engagement with broader communities and educational institutions through advocacy. And I know that CISA is someone who had a head start on this issue. We should encourage continuing debates in legal studies so that our children become interested in the career that we engage in. I can tell you from personal experience that the background that CISA has shared with us today is quite helpful to encourage our kids to become lawyers too. My kids resented every part of my career because they thought it took away my parental time for them, and they also thought it sacrificed most of their holidays. The fourth challenge I'd like to share with you is that lawyers in emerging democracies must begin to engage in continuing legal education and training. Because law is not static, the legal rules that we engage in order to serve our clients are dynamic, and conventional legal principles are often scrutinized with a view to reform and modernize them. And the benefit of continuing legal education is that it brings us up to speed with the world's best practices. The fifth challenge that I'd like to put up relates to cross-jurisdictional engagements with legal fraternities in other jurisdictions. That is important because we now live in a global village where things which happen in one jurisdiction affect others. And it's important for us to be broad and to appreciate what other lawyers in equally emerging democracies do with a view to understand how best we can equip ourselves to do our job. I now move to make some concluding remarks. I've raised these challenges not for the sake of it or in order to engage in some intellectual exercise with a view to formulate philosophical questions. I've raised these challenges because the primary objective of legal practice in emerging democracy is not to make money. I can share with you some experience which a profound mentor of me said to me when I was still a young lawyer, challenged by financial difficulties. And he said, you know, you can practice bad law, you'll make money, but your career will be short-lived. If you practice good law, you will still earn a reasonable living, but over a long-lasting career. That is a lesson which still guides me in my pursuit of my legal career. Because we often think that law is a means to a cash register. That is not true. Something else ought to be the primary objective of our career. Legal practitioners in emerging democracies should have a greater degree of conscience, an abiding commitment to advance their career responsibly and in a manner that instills public confidence in our profession. If we do so, we might encourage those chance takers who seek to discourage and disincentivize us from fulfilling our duties without fear, favor, or prejudice. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for listening.
The Gen Z would say, what a wow. Like, what a wow, ladies and gentlemen. And perhaps that is why Mr. Namanje finds it hard to formulate a message for Advocate Maleka's book, because What do you say after someone has said all that to us? And what's the line? I wish it can happen every other day, like every other month. Advocate Malika, thank you so much, really, for that presentation. I think I speak on behalf of many of my colleagues when I say that you hit the nail on the head. You probably spoke to all of us on different topics, from the students at university to those that are practicing at the highest level in this country. So thank you that you're able to come all this way and truly make an impact that will hopefully be long lasting and visible in our society. And ladies and gentlemen, with that, we've really come to the end of what I promised you to be a short program. I have the difficult and easy task of closing off this event. And I want to start just really by thanking everyone who made this event possible. I will start with our keynote speaker. For those of you who don't know, Advocate Malika practices as an advocate at the Johannesburg Bar, and he runs a very busy practice. Very busy in the sense that sometimes when you have a matter and you are looking for him, you are even afraid to ask, is he available? Because you'll be met with, no, he's not. And when you are met with, no, he's not, you'd have to look for alternatives. And that becomes a little bit difficult because everyone would become unavailable, or at least everyone would meet for a specific matter. And it's really so humbling that you are able to take time out to be with us here today, not because you had a matter. I mean, he didn't come because he was arguing something else. He came just for this. And I think that is worthy of another round of applause. So thank you, Advocate Malika, and truly thank you for taking time to think through what you came to speak to us about today. It is something that many of us may have thought of, but perhaps needed to hear from someone else. And while you are speaking, I wanted to say, you see, there is, in South Africa, there's just a little extra distinction that comes with being senior counsel. And it's the fact that the president must award you that title. And so when you were speaking, I was like, yeah, the president of a country must recognize that you are a man or a woman of virtue. And I think what you've done for us tonight is truly demonstrate why a president of a country like South Africa would recognize you with the title of senior counsel. So thank you once again. And then, of course, the man of the moment, Mr. Namanje. When I was thinking of this, and didn't want to call it a vote of thanks for reasons known to you and I, is that I was like, well, to thank Mr. Namanje, I would have to start from the very beginning. To thank your mother. Because she is the one we know. She's the one we've met. And I mean, from knowing her, we can see why you are who you are. And I would do an injustice to thank you for simply existing without acknowledging your very beginning. And that is to thank Merusa in her absence, your family, which are your siblings, your wife, and your children. Because every day we see you sacrifice a lot. At this point, I'm not exactly sure. I think you just love it, like you love the thrill, like you just love this practice. And we've seen you go far and beyond, over and above, below and everywhere, truly, for the practice of the legal profession, for your clients, for your colleagues, who work with you, and even those who know you just from legal practice, for students who are studying law, and for any student who really walks in needing assistance. So thank you, Mr. Namanje, for being you, first of all. Thank you for finding a need to write so that you can educate a greater population. And thank you for pouring out your love for legal practice into pages that will exist long after you're gone. Advocate Maleka speaks of good legal practice, and I think it starts with lawyers who understand what they're doing. I dare say you have more than understood what you're doing. You have gone further to make us understand what we need to do. And that is something personally, as your colleague, I don't take for granted. And I know others who are here to support you who don't necessarily work here also don't take for granted. And it's something for you to be proud of. And guys, I know Sisa doesn't like to be praised, but it's his moment. So it's something that we do not take for granted. And yeah, sometimes the copy machine will be slow, but please, we are still good people. So yes, Mr. Namanje, I cannot find other words apart from thank you and God bless you. And then I want to thank you, our invited guests, for taking time out to be here. You didn't know whether we're going to be long or short. You know, lawyers can talk forever. We are right under politicians when it comes to talking. So thank you for taking time to be here, for acknowledging Mr. Namanje's work, and for choosing to be here rather than anywhere else. And especially the students. You know, when Advocate Maleka was talking about inventive legal practice, I was actually thinking of ChatGPT. Guys, you love the ChatGPT. But I want to thank you because I hope the message came across. Because ChatGPT is not going to make you win. You may win, but your career will be short-lived. I hope you take that message home. But thank you for taking time out. You could have been anywhere else today, but you chose to be here to learn, to grow, and honestly, we love to see it. And then, of course, our service providers, from the sound to the lights to the chairs to really the drinks we have to the nice photos we are going to take. And guys, please take enough pictures, Nick. Yes. Really, the live streaming, I really just want to thank you, our service providers. Thank you for working with us in the manner that you did, for not giving Menelaos stress, because everything was really set up on time. You were ready, you were efficient, you were responsive. Often we complain about Namibian service, but here, a 10 out of 10, guys. Please continue to do that. And then our colleagues, Menela and your team, Chief Event Organizer, thank you so much for making tonight possible. May you continue to do so. And really, colleagues, thank you for going over and above your job descriptions. So, yes, we can add event coordination to your CVs also after this. You always pull off a good one, and we are truly grateful for that. And then, before I say finally, I really want to thank Mr. Namanje spoke about the Sisa Namanje Foundation. And it's great work we do there to try and assist the less privileged amongst us. And I have perhaps the honor and not so much the honor of leading it. And when I say not so much the honor, it's because it's a difficult task to weigh needs and decide who is more deserving. When you are on that end of life, you realize that everybody needs something, and sometimes you are actually their last call of hope. And it's a task I don't take lightly, but it's also a task that Mr. Namanje enables through his generosity. But over and above his generosity, there have been individuals who have taken it upon themselves to further provide funding. And I would like to specifically recognize donations we've received from Advocate Eva Shifatoka and from one of our clients, Paragon Investments. Those are donations we have received in the past 12 months, and they have been significant in making our work easier. The work we do is special. It's one of my trustees. Every time we do a donation and we find, I remember we donated to an orphanage, and she was so moved just by seeing how needy situations can get. And sometimes we operate from a position of privilege. And you know, Mr. Namanje spoke about the fact that people say he's dishing out money. At this point, I'm like, you can say what you want to say, but I think to us it matters that at the end of the day, while someone sees it as dishing out money, there are lives that we change. And that cannot be taken away from by a social media comment. It cannot be washed away. It cannot be wished away. And fortunately for those who need it, it will continue. And then with that, ladies and gentlemen, may I then thank Ms. Namanje for entrusting me with leading the program for this evening. Really, Mr. Namanje, thank you so much for that privilege. The final announcements are to announce to you that the Kapana is inside the building. You will be directed, I'm sure you will see the smoke and the smell of meat. Oh, is it outside? Okay, I'm being told it's outside. You may also ask around. We have various toilets within the building, so you may ask for directions where those are. There are enough drinks, I believe, for each and every one of us, alcoholic and non-alcoholic. So please do enjoy. I'm told that there's a car with lights on, but for some reason I can't access that communication now. I will just announce it. I just remember the first numbers being 227, but I'll just confirm it and announce it. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, oh yes, yeah, no, my boss. Just okay. The car is N222 077 Windhoek. Your car lights are on. So please, N 222 Windhoek, please go turn off your car lights. We do have jumpers though, if it becomes too late. We have everything here, or at least most of the time. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, really I wish all of us a very good evening. Let us socialize in a harmonious manner. Most of us are legal practitioners here, so let us drink responsibly, because nobody's waking up at 6 a.m. to bail you out. And then, let's just have a good spirit and go well in unity. Thank you so much for being a good audience.